We're going to go over a couple other points here for our relationship between the items within audit risk. Now, an increased risk of material misstatement, meaning we just later on discover that internal controls are not operating effectively as much, or there's just more inherent risk that we discovered. So that's an increased risk of material misstatement, would require you to decrease the detection risk, also known as the synonym here of a lower acceptable level of detection risk. So you would need to decrease detection risk because, let's say, right before we said 30 is made up of 2 is inherent risk, 5 was control risk, and 3 was our detection risk, right? So we've got that. Now let's say this inherent risk we just discover actually goes up to 3. We say, uh-oh, that's a problem, right? This is now 15 is the risk of material misstatement, times 3 is 45. So our overall audit risk is now 45. What can we do here? Well, we can test more, which reduces our detection risk now to maybe 2, balancing us out again, saying 3 times 5 is going to get us 15 times 2, which is 30. Do we see what we did there? If we discover later on that for whatever reason the risk of material misstatement is higher than originally thought out, we need to lower detection risk because this is the one we have actual control over, bringing us back to our original audit risk of 30. Satisfied by performing more tests of detail. Let's play around with this formula again. A decreased risk of material misstatement would allow for an increase to detection risk in order for audit risk to remain the same. So playing around with these numbers again, let's say that our inherent risk drops. It's not as risky as we thought. It's now 1. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. So now our audit risk is 15. We could actually now, in order to maintain that 30, which is the number we agreed upon earlier, we can now change this 3 to, let's say, 6. We say 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 6 is 30. And we're okay. Now, what does this mean? This means that we have a higher detection risk. We're going to perform less tests of details, less substantive testing, less work, less money. We perform less tests of details. Seeing how that relationship works there, understanding this will help you with so many multiple choice questions. We're looking at a little bit more with these audit risk relationships. You can see a lot of multiple choice questions asking about how these different risks relate to each other. They're inversely related. One goes up, should the other go down? Something like that. We see here that a reduction in control risk results in a lower sample size if all other factors in the audit risk formula remain constant. And that makes sense because let's think about that for a second. A reduction in control risk means we've assessed internal controls. We can now say that because of additional testing of controls, we see that internal controls are pretty solid. Thus, we reduce our control risk. And because we reduce control risk, thinking back to that formula, we can do less substantive testing, which means that detection risk will go up just to balance it out. A lower sample size means that you're doing less testing because you're just less items in the sample, thus less items to test. We got this concept of interim testing, which I covered in multiple lessons, but just going to go over it again briefly. The concept of interim testing is that you are, let's say you've got a normal fiscal year, a January to December audit. You would be doing testing in, let's say, June. And you would be testing for the first half of the year. So here's 1, here's 6 for June, and here's 12 for the end of the year. So normally you would, if you were just doing a full year audit, you'd wait till after December and then audit the entire year. But you can do what's called interim testing, where you test, let's say, for 6 months, right? Maybe on July 1st, you test the first 6 months. The idea behind that is, well, you're getting a jump on your audit work, right? You're testing the first half of the year when you can, instead of waiting till the very end to test everything. In small audits, you may only need to test the first half of the year. So there are instances where if you do enough testing in the first half of the year, and then you can rely upon internal controls enough, you may not need to do any additional testing. Now, you're not going to find that in like large firms and public accounting. That would just be a much more theoretical textbook AI CPA, but also maybe some smaller clients. But that's the idea of interim testing. So performing procedures only during an interim period, so only, let's say, during the first half of the year, increases the level of detection risk, which makes sense because you're only testing half the year. You're not testing the second half. which again sounds weird, but it's a concept we're going over, as by only testing half the year allows the other half of the year to contain undetected misstatements. If the auditor had intentions of testing accounts only at an interim period and wants to decrease detection risk and as such overall audit risk, you can test the accounts at year end. Nothing revolutionary there, makes sense. It's just if you want to decrease detection risk, well, you gotta do some testing. A lot of this comes from multiple choice questions that you'll see on the exam. Just want to make sure you understand this relationship, understand how this all comes together. Lastly, here, if internal controls are solid and control risk is low, it's much more likely to perform substantive procedures during only the interim period. If they've just got stellar internal controls and you can really rely upon it, just a few months and then you're good. Now, that's in theory. In practice, oh boy, is it just a wide array of different methods and different treatments. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.